This is WXOJLP Northampton, 103.3 FM, your Valley Free radio station. Welcome. I'm Warren Odess-Gillette, and this is A Baha'i Perspective. A Baha'i Perspective is a radio program that presents a Baha'i perspective on life through interviews. If you want information specifically on the Baha'i Faith, you're welcome to visit the website www.baha'i.org. That's BAHAI.org. Or you can call the toll-free number, 1-800-22-UNITE. Today I'm playing an interview with Jeanine Sacco, co-administrator for the Green Acre Baha'i Conference Center in Eliot, Maine. She met her husband at UMass during graduate school while both were getting postgraduate degrees in education. Soon after they married and had two small children, they decided to pack up and go to South America. In Brazil, they ultimately started an international school called School of the Nations. I started the interview by asking Jeanine where she grew up and what was it like growing up there.
I grew up all over the place. That's not really an easy question.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I spent maybe the first 4 years of my life there. But my father was in the Air Force, so we were transferred to different places. Ardmore, Oklahoma was one place where we spent some time. I actually spent 4 years of my early childhood in Germany, Frankfurt am Main. I remember that. I was from about the age 4 till 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember, particularly I remember making my first communion there, because I come from a Catholic background, and my family, very active Catholic family, and so that was a big moment of my childhood. And then later on, we lived in France, Dreux, France, which is near Paris. And
For how long there?
Oh, that was a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And then really most of my childhood was in Minneapolis. I went back and I went to a Catholic grade school. I went to a Catholic high school. And then the University of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. And what did you study at the University of Minnesota?
Mostly languages. I really, humanities and languages, and I majored in French with a minor in English and Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you had learned German when you were in Germany and French when you were in France by any chance?
Yeah, well, that's, I wish that I had learned German in Germany. Unfortunately, I went to an American school, and nobody in my family was really German. When I went to France, however, my mother is French, and so I went to a French school, and I really picked up a lot of French, so I did learn how to speak French.
And it was military reasons why you went to France?
Yes, there's an Air Force base nearby there, so yeah, that's why we lived there.
Okay. And so you said you studied French at the University of
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Okay. Yep.
And then what happened after?
Well, I had just graduated, actually, in 1968, and I had graduated rather early, I guess. I was 20 years old, and I had done it so fast. I'd done it in 3 years, and just kind of rushed through the courses, and at the end of all that, I sort of thought, well, now what am I going to do?
You're 20 years old, yeah.
I'm 20 years old, and I've graduated, and well, now what do I do with it, So I was still living at home, and it was about that time that I had my first contact with the Bahá'í Faith, because my girlfriend, who also had gone to Catholic high school with me, kept on talking about these strange-sounding people. They seemed strange to me. At that time, I guess the group was into things like the lost continent of Mu and palm reading and astrology. So, I was thinking, oh boy, she is in with a really wacky group. I better go and protect her. So, one day she said, well, would you like to come to a meeting? And I thought, okay, I'm going to just tell them what it's all about. I'm going to bring my Bible, and they're going to be sorry they ever interested my friend here in this crazy faith.
So like imaginings of this is some wild and
yes, I thought it was some way out sect. Yeah, I thought
just by the name of it.
The name sounded strange. I hadn't ever heard of it before. And I was a very active Catholic. I was, in all the kinds of youth groups that you can imagine, contemplating possibly becoming a nun someday. So I was very much into it. And I have to this day, a very active Catholic family. So the only thing that was unusual about me as a Catholic was probably that I really stayed close to my Bible. I really felt the power of the Word of God in the Bible. And so I did bring it with me, thinking that I would find something that would disprove whatever it was they were going to tell me that evening. So I did. I went to that first fireside.
That's what they called the meeting?
Yes, it was a meeting, an informal meeting at the home of one of the Baha'is in the area in South Minneapolis, and there were really it was sort of an amazing group of people. That was the first thing that struck me.
Oh, really?
Because of their diversity. There was a middle-aged gentleman from Scotland who was married to a Scottish lady. There was an American divorcee with her 2 children. There were youth from, nearby states. There were all ages, all types. The lady who gave the fireside was an African American lady. And so, I was impressed by the diversity of the people that were gathered there and who seemed to be really having a good time together.
So even though you sort of you were very skeptical going in, you still were open enough to be impressed with the diversity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I as I look back on it, I think that I've always really been a sort of a seeker after truth. And so I thought I had the truth and I was going to bring the truth to them. But, it was like God turning it around on me and saying, Jeanine, there's a little bit more truth out there than you know about. And thank God I was open enough to listen to it. Yeah, the subject that she spoke of was progressive revelation and the idea that, God has progressively revealed his truth over the centuries, over periods of time, to various religions. And that really, for that reason, no one religion had all the truth. And for some reason, that just made so much sense to me, even as a Catholic, where you were brought up at that time to think that really the Catholic Church had the truth and those poor other people really didn't and, were sort of lost. So that made so much more sense to me. I thought, gee, why hadn't I ever thought of that? Anyway.
That was your first exposure to the Baha'i Faith, and that was pretty much it while you were at the University of Minnesota?
Well, I had just graduated, so I was no longer at the university. The only contact I had with the university then at that time, in September, after graduating, was to go to the Newman Center. You see, that's the whole thing, too, the contrast. You go to the Baha'i meeting, and all these different people of all races, ages, nationalities are there together, really worshiping together and talking about, the Word of God together, enjoying each other's company. But in my experience as a Catholic, I'd gone to the Newman Center, and those were all young people. And really pretty much white young people, and having a great time with our guitars and so on, but very, monotonous in a sense, all one type of person. And if I went to my parents' church, the local Catholic church, it would be, again, mostly all older people and of one race, basically. And so it was just that lack of diversity that I began to see. My eyes had been open to, there's something really different in this community. So, that really impressed me.
So give me a little background on the Newman Center.
Well, the Catholic Newman Center, those exist, I believe, on virtually all campuses, university campuses. And they're like, you have, I suppose, the Christian Center and I don't even, having not been on campuses for many years, I don't know, but it's where young people who are affiliated with that church, that religion, can go for courses, for discussions, for worship services. It just kind of gives young Catholics a place to hang out together and enjoy each other's company and learn a little bit more about their faith. It's a very nice place, very friendly, place where you can meet nice people of your own religion, usually. Yeah.
And you left the Baha'i meeting having a different point of view about the Baha'i faith?
I did. I was, I thought, well, gee, I didn't quote any scripture at them. That was that wasn't what I had intended. But I went home and I actually began to share some of these things with my family, my very Catholic family. And I said, the Baha'is believe this about, and they believe that, God has revealed himself here and there. And I kept on going on and on about some of these things that I had learned. And I actually was so intrigued by it, I began to go to other firesides. So I didn't go to just that fireside. There was another one midweek. So I went over to that one, and we talked about another topic and another one. And so, like, in a matter of just weeks, I would go several times a week, and I'd find out things. And I'd bring that home to my family, and I'd say, they believe in this? And it's really interesting what they believe about this and about that. And it was really my father who said, you're starting to sound like one of those Baha'is. And I thought, boy, he's right. I am starting to sound like one of them. And it was really that I think sowed the seed in my mind that, gosh, to question my affiliation as a Catholic, even though I had been very active up to that point. And I could have gone on and on, just, not knowing, I wasn't reading that much. I read a little bit of Baha'u'llah in the New Era, but it was mostly these conversations, these contacts, these discussions, these fireside discussions at different people's homes that really touched my heart. And then one day I Catholics have these beautiful little artistic holy cards that you keep in your Bible or in your missal or whatever to mark the page, and they often have a catchy phrase about God or a quote from Scripture. And that particular holy card said, "Not to decide is to decide." I thought, wow. Is God trying to tell me something? So I figured that even though I didn't know very much about the faith, it was only a month after I had found out about it at all, that I seemed to be more identified with the teachings of the Baha'i Faith than I was with those traditional teachings that, I'd grown up with.
Now you mentioned a book, the Baha'u'llah in the New Era.
Yes, yes.
What kind of book was that?
It's a book that really describes, it's one of the oldest books about the Baha'i Faith. I'm not sure when it was written, but I believe the early 1900s by a Scottish Baha'i named John Esselmont. And it describes just any aspect. It's a very useful book because, if you wanted to know what they thought about the afterlife, you just look it up, and it had a little section about that, or about prayer, or about the history of the faith. It has a very nice coming together of, what is the Baha'i Faith about. Yeah.
So this card that said that you were carrying around saying
not to decide is to decide.
Okay. So what did you take that to mean then?
Yeah, I just took that to mean that, my preference, my comfort zone would have been not to do anything about it, but just sort of listen to what these nice people were saying and, and just leave it at that and not change my affiliation, But I decided that really, if I didn't decide to become a Baha'i, I was in a sense saying, well, that's not right, that's not true. And for everything that I had seen, it was so much truer than anything that really I had ever believed. It was the essence of Christianity. These were people that, to me, were showing the love that Christ talked about. And this was confirmed actually by a priest. I was actually confirmed in my decision by a priest.
Interesting.
And not because he was agreeing with me, but my dad who was a military man, took me. He said he got very angry when I said, I've decided that I want to become a Baha'i. I really feel that I believe in this, and I have to become a Baha'i. My dad was so absolutely frightened and scared to death that I was going to lose my soul and go to hell, and that he, being the sincere Christian that he was and the sincere Catholic, said, well, I'm going to take you to the priest, and he'll convince you that this is not the right thing. So I thought, well, if it's the truth, it's all right, because if he can show me something that really indicates that this is not true, then I want to know that too, because it really is truth that I'm after. It's not being a Baha'i or being a Catholic. I want the truth. I'm a seeker of truth. Mm. So he took me to this military priest, because my dad's a military man. And he's a very articulate, strong, speaker, and used to giving sermons to soldiers, and telling them what for.
Yeah, I'm getting the
picture. And I'm this sweet young thing,
20 years old, right?
20 years old, and I've never said boo to anybody practically. So he took me to this gentleman, and I brought my Bible again, because again I thought, well, if he can show me from the Bible something that would indicate that why I really should not believe in Baha'u'llah and become a Baha'i, then, I haven't studied it very long. I've only known it for a month. I will, certainly there's a possibility that I might not really stay a Baha'i. Mm-hmm. But he looked, when my father explained to him what the situation was and that I had become a Baha'i, he got so angry and so red in the face and began to yell and shout. I really don't even remember what he said, but it was the way that he said it and the whole lack of wanting to even go to the scripture to teach me, to educate me, but just being angry that I even investigated something outside of the faith. And I looked at him and I thought, he's really convincing me that I'm making the right decision.
Oh my gosh.
Because he got so unloving. And to me, the essence of Christianity was love. And I'd seen all this love manifested in these people of all varieties for the past month. And he was really indicating to me the exact opposite. So he, in a sense, confirmed me in my decision to become a Baha'i. Mm. And my dad didn't bother me after that, really.
Interesting.
He just sort of let it. Okay, I went there. I talked to him. So that was that.
What about your mother?
My mother, who is French and had been brought up, and I think she had been exposed to a variety of religious beliefs other than Catholicism. I mean, she was brought up Catholic, but she was familiar with theosophy, and she'd gone to the Sorbonne, she'd gone into philosophy, and she had a kind of a broader range of experience, and so she didn't seem quite as worried as my dad. My dad was so worried he did not want Baha'i books in the house. Mm. Don't you bring those books into this house, because he really felt that this was some kind of devilish literature or something, But my mother was much more open, even though she didn't ask me as many questions about it. My dad was much more, kind of questioning me. But then really after I saw the priest, they let me
bring books in.
I don't really recall being able to bring books in for a while. It was a very quiet being a Baha'i, and I didn't always attend because I wasn't always able to do that. Out of respect for my parents, I didn't want my faith to cause a division in the family, right. Because that wasn't the whole point of it either, Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is that this was in September. I became a Baha'i. I found out about the faith either at the end of August or at the beginning of September. I became a Baha'i by the end of September, and Dan Jordan, a member of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States, came through giving a talk on education and spiritual education and a program that he was involved with at the University of Massachusetts and the ANISA program. So I went to that talk, became totally enthralled. Wow, that's what I want to do. I want to become involved in education, like, to teach children to know how to love and to love to know. He spoke of the interaction between these two capacities of knowing and loving. So he totally turned me on to education, and I decided to go to graduate school. And that's what led me for the first time in my life to move away from home to UMass and to study there and get my degree in education.
And you were there at UMass for how long?
I was there, let's see, it would have been from 69 through, I think it was 71. I'm terrible at years, but just long enough to get my master's degree. And that's where I met my husband. Okay. He was doing graduate work there as well.
So what happened after you got your graduate degree in education?
Well, we decided, Jim finished his doctorate. It took him a little while longer to finish his doctorate. I worked as a teacher in a model kindergarten program there. And we moved to get his first job in Maryland, Baltimore County, Maryland. He became a teacher trainer, and I was a housewife. I got a job, but then I got pregnant. So we had both of our children in the Maryland, D.C. area. And so for the next few years, that was my life, really being a part of the Baha'i community of that area and raising my children.
And then what happened after that?
After that, we decided that we really wanted to serve the faith in a more dynamic, active way. And the idea of pioneering to another country to help another Baha'i community that needed, some assistance to fortify their communities or whatever, that we would do it.
That's sort of the definition of pioneering in the Baha'i Faith?
Yes, the definition of pioneering is, since we don't have missionaries, people who are paid to actually go and spread the faith, Baha'is choose to live in areas where they can practice their professions and at the same time help out in communities where they might live. So that's what we did. We sold everything that we had, and we were ready to go to a job actually in Brazil. And as fate would have it, at that time the doors were closing for visas, to work visas to Brazil.
Why was that?
It just was a common...
Political thing?
I think it's a political thing, tit for tat.
The
United States makes it hard for Brazilians to come here, and so then the Brazilians make it hard for the Americans to go there.
Sure.
And so I think it was we just happened on that really bad time. Yeah. So we had sold everything. Jim had given up his job. We decided we're going to go somewhere. And, it's either now or never. So,
and how old were the kids at the time?
Our daughter was about 1, and our son was about 4. So they were very small, but it was a good time to go. We thought this is a really good time. They aren't entrenched in school. They don't have a lot of, school friends that they're going to miss. So this is really the time. They'll be the most, it'll be easiest for them. So, yeah. So we worked with the Pioneer Committee that helps people get settled in different places. And they said, well, there's a need in this country, that country, and so on. Which one do you prefer? And we chose Paraguay.
Okay.
And so we wound up going to Paraguay.
And why did you choose Paraguay from your choices?
Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't know one from the other, really, at that point. It just...
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Eeny, meeny. That's exactly right, Why not? So there was a great need. And I think that they might have said, that might have been the neediest place.
Okay, all right.
It was a hard place to go because it's a hard place to find a job. And we didn't have jobs there. Originally, in Brazil, we had a university job offered, but we couldn't get the visa. So we went to Paraguay instead. Yeah.
So what happened in Paraguay?
Well, that was interesting because we settled down in, a very small town with a lot of dirt roads, and it was quite an adaptation, from city life, North American
Baltimore
city life.
and Washington metropolitan area.
Exactly. Washing diapers by hand, and this was really a new experience, and how to live in that kind of an environment. And we were living on our savings, so we didn't have a lot of savings. So we really were looking actively for jobs, but it was hard to find jobs there. Jim actually survived. We survived for a little, in a way, by him teaching English to local people. And one of his first students was the Brazilian consul and his wife. And so he began to teach English to them. And when they found out about our situation, we had actually met them in a restaurant. Our kids were at the table and maybe, walking around a little bit the table. And they were in the table next door, and they thought, oh, such cute children. I wonder where they're from, little blonde children, blue-eyed children. They sort of stand out in Paraguay. And so we had made friends with them, and Jim had begun to teach them English. And then when they found out our situation, that we didn't really have jobs, the gentleman said, well, you really should go to Brazil. If you ever get a chance, we'll help you. And so sure enough, within a very short period of time, within 6 months, there was another opportunity to go to Brazil from somebody that we knew there. They wanted to move to the Amazon. It was a Baha'i couple who ran an American school in Porto Alegre. They wanted to go to the Amazon, but they needed substitute teachers and administrators. And so they knew we were looking for a job. And so they said, yeah, you really should come and take our job so we can go to the Amazon. So it worked out really well because we took those jobs. The consul helped us with our visas, and we not only got temporary visas, we got permanent visas.
Oh, wow.
Right off the bat, which is never, it's unheard of. So, there's a wisdom in everything. So
yeah, so taking the circuitous route to Brazil rather than the direct route. Yeah,
yes.
Interesting.
God knows how, his wisdom is very interesting, and his sense of humor.
Yeah. So tell me about this American school that you were administrators for.
It was a small American school. It was a school, it was a large building, 3 stories, and the top story was actually a large, very comfortable apartment for the teacher-administrator couple. And there had been a number of teacher-administrator couples at this school over the years who were Baha'is. They happened to be Baha'is. So the ones that said they wanted to go to the Amazon, they were a Baha'i couple. They had taken this over from another Baha'i couple who had no idea that they were Baha'is. It just happened that, that the school council had interviewed these people, thought they were excellent educators, and had hired them, not on the basis of religion, and then they found out later they were Baha'is. Of course, not that they were all that excited about having 3 Baha'i couples in a row, because that seemed a bit much, I think, for them. But it was a lovely place to live, and our kids could go to school there, and even though our daughter was just, tiny, she was, 1.5 and, going on 2. But she would come down and she'd join the kindergartners sometime, and we had, multi-age groupings, and, it was very nice. We lived there for a couple of years, Porto Alegre.
What caused you to
leave there?
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting. It really came about because an American school is usually... They strive to teach the American way. There's a part of the daily ritual is the pledge allegiance to the flag. It's very much identified with Christianity more than any other religion. And there was a group of missionaries, really, whose children went to that school, who were beginning to feel very uncomfortable that they kept on getting Baha'is, because it didn't seem right to them somehow. So I think there was a little campaign to, we need to get a good Christian couple here, and so we began to look for other alternatives. And Jim had... he had helped a local non-Baha'i. It was a lady who was at the university, I think it was the Federal University or the Catholic University of Rio Grande do Sul, and he had been one of the people to look over her thesis. And so he knew her and she knew him. And she had recently been appointed as a consultant to the mayor of a small town in the middle of Brazil, Goiânia. And she said, if you're looking for a job, I'm sure, this is a new government and they're looking for people to work with the teachers in this area. Why don't you see if, you want to come and work here? So we wound up going to Goiânia and becoming consultants to the mayor of Goiânia in education.
And what was that like?
Well, that was interesting. We learned a lot of Portuguese.
I mean, that was your first encounter with Portuguese?
No. I mean,
Okay.
it was a bilingual school. The American school...
Oh, that's right. It was basically English in the
yeah,
American school, right?
It was like an American school, but you're in Brazil.
Right.
And the Baha'i community, of course, you always speak Portuguese for the most part.
Right.
And so we had some Portuguese lessons while we were there. So we were getting a little bit better in our Portuguese.
But now you're immersed in Portuguese.
Now we're really immersed, and this is our professional language. So it was quite a challenge, but we learned an awful lot. And then our kids began to go to Brazilian schools, so they, were very good, very fluent in Portuguese. Remain so to this day. Yeah.
And so how long were you doing this consulting work?
We did this for about 2 years, as I recall. When governments change and, people change, then those jobs sort of run out. Those are political appointments, I guess, or whatever. But as we were, I guess we have to go back a little bit to that other school. When we took over the American school of Porto Alegre, the outgoing couple and we sort of overlapped for a while because we learned the ropes from them as to how the school operated. And we began to talk, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could start a school someday that would be not so much a school where you'd pledge allegiance to the flag of just one country, United States or whatever, but you'd really be world citizens. And there would be appreciation for all nations and all religions, and, it'd be a spiritually minded school. Wouldn't it be great? And so we began to talk about that. And so when we decided that we'd correspond with this couple and see if someday we could do that, maybe 10 years in the future. So when we got this appointment in Guayana, they had gone actually to the Amazon, but their contract was running out as well. They got jobs in Brasilia, which is only a couple of hours' drive from Guayana. So now we were within commuting distance to kind of talk to each other about this vision of a future school that we might start together. So really that's what led to the next stage of our adventure in South America, which was to start a school together. We actually were able to start a Baha'i sponsored school, you could say. Yes.
So tell me about that.
The school was called School of the Nations, and it was a school that offered a bilingual program in Portuguese and English to elementary age children. We had thought, we didn't know the details of the school. We just had the kind of broad outlines in our minds. But there happened to be a crisis in the American School of Brasilia about that time, in which the Brazilian children who went to the American school were really made to feel like they didn't belong. And the teachers, there was a contingent of teachers that had just come from an American school in Iran that had just closed down. So this whole huge group of teachers had come there, and they thought, these Brazilian children, they're slowing our classes down, and they're so hard to teach, and, it really became, they felt so unwanted that it got into the newspapers that there was a crisis at the American school. So they came to us knowing that we were planning another kind of a school that was based on world citizenship and all these other, ideals. And they said, you have to start this school right now. Well, we had nothing. We were even living still, in Guayana. We were living in 2 different cities. We didn't have a lot of money, just what 2 families might have, 2 young families. But I remember a Brazilian doctor saying, look, here's some money. You start this school. We need this school right now. So we thought, well, maybe we can. Maybe this is an opportunity, a God-given opportunity. So we actually moved in with that couple into their small apartment, and every night we'd sort of come up with, okay, now what could we do? And then the local English school offered us they had just built some new classrooms, and they said, okay, temporarily you can use our classrooms. So they offered us 3 classrooms in their new English school. And we started the School of the Nations with just a handful of children. It was about 17 children, including our own. And that was the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And how did it progress from there?
It was really miraculous. It just was amazing because it really had nothing to do with, our material means, but it just grew from semester to semester because the children were multi-age groupings. The little children particularly had older models that, they saw the second graders, the kindergartners were grouped with the second graders. Well, but it was a small group. And so they acted like a family. They saw these older kids learning how to read, and they were getting excited by it. They began to read. So these rumors kept going out. We kept on hearing rumors. They had the secret, literacy program there. Because these kindergartners are just reading at a second grade level, And it was so funny. It really grew just by word of mouth. We didn't do any advertising. It was just total word of mouth. The children feeling so comfortable, so loved, so cared for. They were learning both Portuguese and English, even though it was initially only a half-a-day program, which is typical for Brazil to have a half-day elementary program.
I see.
And so it just grew in an amazing way. It astounded us. And gradually we added on, of course, staff. But it was a bilingual program from the start because we wanted the children, whoever came, to feel comfortable in Brazil and to value the Brazilian culture and the Brazilian language, as well as to feel comfortable as world citizens. And so using English, you could say, as that international language.
The school sort of progressed over the years to what point?
Well, it grew until, my husband is the best one for statistics, but it doubled, let's say, the first semester, and then it doubled again. It really grew by leaps and bounds. It just overwhelmingly, it astounded us. It was really quite miraculous. But there was obviously a need for that kind. And to this day, it now has about 650 students, and from kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, really, until there's a high school program. There's a very small high school program. So, it just, I think it was the moral education component that really touched the hearts of people. There were even people who missed at the American school. There was a wonderful American school, a very large American school in that city, but it did not really teach values. It didn't teach, moral education. We weren't out to teach the Baha'i Faith. We were out to teach concepts of love, unity, peace, that kind of thing. So we really created the curriculum around those concepts.
So moral education was more about teaching virtues, or?
It was not just teaching virtues. Virtues was a part of it, absolutely a part of it. But it was, for example, we would have all school festivals, like United Nations Festival was a really big one. So for that period of time in October, where United Nations Day occurs, October 24th, we would structure a lot of activities around studies of different countries. Each classroom would take a different country, for example, and would learn about the history and the culture and the crafts of that country. And they'd dress up in costumes of that country. They'd learn songs in the language of that country. They'd raise funds with their crafts for UNICEF. And we'd have a big culminating festival with all, like an open house for parents and anybody really who wanted to come and participate in this United Nations Festival and see the festival of the Parade of the Nations. The children would parade in their costumes with their countries, on themselves. And it was like a celebration of the beauty of the diversity of nations, but at the same time, the children learned about those nations. And another aspect of the moral education curriculum in the older grades, particularly, was a study of the effect of religion on society. So, like fifth grade would study the Old Testament, and how that affected Jewish civilization. There was also, in sixth grade, they'd study the effect of the New Testament on civilization and the teachings of Christ, and so on. We would teach, in Islam and so on, in the Quran. So the kids learned a little bit about each religion as they were going through, and it was interesting how many different religions we had there. There were Muslims. There were even people from countries that did not have a religion, from communist countries at that time. But they felt that they were respected as human beings, and they identified with the ideals, I think, of cooperation. We taught a lot about cooperation, cooperative learning, cooperative games. That was a big emphasis at the school.
And the school is still in existence today?
It's still in existence today in Brasilia, the capital city, and as I say, it's grown to about 650 students from 40 different countries. It always had about a representation of about 30 or 40 different countries, but now there's many more children in it. Yes.
And what caused you to leave the school?
We decided, we had been there for 15 years. That's a long time. From beginning to, it's really coming out and growing. And but my parents began to, kind of need a little bit more help. My dad had some heart problems. Jim's father passed away, so his mother, needed more support, and she got Alzheimer's. So we decided it would be good to be closer to our parents. And we were offered these jobs here just, by somebody who knew that we were looking for something stateside again. So that's how we came to be at Greenacre.
And you've been at Greenacre for how long?
11 years now, 11 years as of the 14th of October. That's almost, our anniversary's coming up.
Oh, wow. So it's almost getting up as long as you'd been in with the School of the Nation.
I know. And it's so hard to leave a place when you've been there that long. Your heart gets so rooted, in a sense. A lot of love going on.
So between your time in Paraguay and your time in Brazil, we're talking about what kind of time span?
Between Paraguay and Brazil?
Being in South America.
I guess it was 67. Again, years. I'm the world's worst historian in terms of what date it was and how many years ago.
But just how many years there?
We were in Paraguay. We were only there for 6 months. Again, we didn't have jobs there. So when the opportunity came to go to Brazil and get a job, we took it. And then in Brazil, we were there for 18 years.
Okay.
Yep.
So what does the future hold for you?
Very good question. I don't know. I think, these are wonderful jobs in the sense that we feel very satisfied in being able to work for the cause of peace and unity of mankind. We meet people from all over the world here at Greenacre, and we work with people of all religions even. It's not just the Baha'is that come here. So it's a very satisfying type of work, and we're enjoying while we're here. But I can't say how long it'll last. There's no date written on the in any contract that I know of. As long as we're needed, I guess. As long as it works.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And the best of luck to you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jeanine Sacco, an educator and co-administrator for the Greenacre Baha'i Conference Center in Eliot, Maine. For a copy of this and other interviews, you're welcome to go to the website www.abahaiperspective.com. For information specifically on the Baha'i Faith, you can go to the website www.baha'i.org, or you can call the toll-free number 1-800-22-UNITE.